The early days of the Cold War, as you can see from our previous episodes, are rife with the two new global superpowers attempting to flex their muscles and impose their own particular worldview at the expense of the other power. To best imagine what the inevitable confrontations look like, picture a game of chicken being played with the two sides running at each other, seeing who would flinch first. I'm your host David, and today we'll be talking about one of the earliest and more overlooked incidents of the early Cold War. I am of course talking about Iran. This is the Cold War. The discovery of oil in the early 20th century in what was then known as Persia brought the attention of the world's powers to the shores of the Persian Gulf. Under the control of Reza Shah Pahlavi since 1925, Persia, renamed Iran in 1935, walked a fine line of neutrality while the world's powers tried to gain influence in the country and its oil fields. A long history of German imperial influence continued in the interwar period as the Iranians used the Germans as a counterweight to Soviet and British ambition. The great game of the 19th century was clearly not an easy one to give up. With the outbreak of war in 1939, the Allied reliance on Iranian oil became critical, and all threats to Iran were considered strategic threats to the British Empire. When the Germans launched Operation Barbarossa in the summer of 1941, the Soviet Union found itself a member of the Allies, and also quite dependent on Western support via Lend-Lease programs. Given that the Trans-Iranian Railway was the most convenient way of getting this aid to the Soviet Union, Iranian neutrality became critical for the Allied war effort. As German forces advanced towards the Caucasus and both the Baku oil fields and the Iranian oil fields, decisions were made to ensure this critical region remained in Allied hands. In August and September of 1941, Western Allied forces invaded and occupied southern and central Iran, while Soviet forces occupied northern Iran, all with little resistance. Both the British and the Soviets used their time in occupation to build and expand their influence in the country. New political parties were established, including the British National Will Party and the pro-Soviet Tudeh Party. The Soviet Union even went so far as to create the People's Republic of Azerbaijan and the Kurdish Mahabad Republic. So what were these new republics, and why were they created? The People's Republic of Azerbaijan was proclaimed by the Democratic Party of Azerbaijan in Tabriz in November of 1945, headed by Sayed Jafar Pishavari. The party-created militia had taken control of all the region's government buildings in a decidedly coup-like manner, which was then followed by Pishavari declaring a course of democratic and economic reforms. Azerbaijani was also made the state language, replacing Persian. Pishavari also ordered the redistribution of non-Azerbaijani-owned land and the nationalization of large banks. Infrastructure projects were started and steps taken to improve the welfare of workers. The Soviet-backed Tudeh Party was disbanded, with its members ordered to join the Democratic Party of Azerbaijan. Of course, before you start thinking that this was sounding somewhat non-Soviet, the Republic's security services were modeled after the NKVD, headed by the powerful Mohammad Beria. The repressive tendencies of the state security system were widely, although perhaps quietly, denounced, even by those closest to Pishavari. Must be something to do with that name, Beria? The Soviets had moved 30,000 troops into the Republic in order to prevent Tehran from being able to reassert control over the territory. While it's more than fair to say that the Republic had only been created through the backing of the Soviet Union, the Republic was quite popular with the local population as a result of the prior treatment of the area from Tehran. Poor economic conditions, the attempts to create a homogeneous Persian state, and the oppression of national minorities had won few friends in the region. So, does that mean that the Soviet Union had created the state out of the goodness of its heart, for the benefit of the people? You could make that argument, but it's far more likely that Stalin intended for the People's Republic of Azerbaijan to be merged with the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic. The Republic of Mahabad, predominantly Kurdish, was declared on January 22, 1946, headed by Qazi Muhammad. A Turkish People's Republic was established with the aim of establishing autonomy for Iranian Kurds, the use of Kurdish as the language of education and administration, of equality between the poor and the nobility, and of fraternity with the people of Azerbaijan. The Republic of Mahabad, like the People's Republic of Azerbaijan, was backed by the Soviet Union, although Qazi Muhammad denied that the Kurdish Democratic Party was in fact a communist party. To this end, there are claims that the Soviet Union had even encouraged the Kurdish leaders to forego creating an independent state and instead just join the People's Republic of Azerbaijan. Nevertheless, the USSR did support the new republic and provided motor transport, supported their local economy by purchasing the new country's entire tobacco crop, and most importantly, protected it from the Iranian army. Both of these republics were short-lived. Dependent on Soviet protection, they lacked the ability to resist the Iranian army without the Red Army. By June of 1946, Peshawari knew he was in a very difficult position and agreed to accept the reabsorption of the People's Republic back into Iran. It was agreed that the parliament would be transformed into a provincial council, a system that was already recognized as part of the Iranian constitution. However, by December of 1946, Tehran was reasserting itself by force, and up to 500 supporters of the former republic had been killed. A similar story unfolded in the Republic of Mahabad as Qazi Muhammad lost the support of the tribal leaders after the Red Army withdrew. The government in Tehran executed Qazi Muhammad, and Mahabad was no more. But wait, why did the Soviet Union end its support for the two republics in the first place? So the answer to this lies in a complicated web of international machinations and Iranian oil concessions. Because, let's be honest, some things in history never really change. The Allied occupation of Iran was agreed to end 6 months after the end of the war, with the troops from the United States, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain scheduled to leave by March 2, 1946. The British by this time had secured preferential deals with regards to the extraction of oil, as well as profit sharing by means of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. And the Soviets, seeing this, wanted to do something similar. As the deadline for the troop withdrawal came closer, Moscow began to pressure the Iranian Prime Minister Ahmad Qawam to officially recognize the People's Republic of Azerbaijan. When Tehran stalled in giving an answer, Stalin responded by refusing to withdraw Red Army troops from their area of occupation. The explanation given by the Kremlin was that they would not remove troops from Iranian Azerbaijan until order had been restored and Iran's hostile attitude had ceased. The United States, aware of the Soviet position, lodged a formal protest in the United Nations Security Council, which resulted in the passage of United Nations Security Council Resolution Number 2. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? That was on January 30th, 1946. The resolution called on Iran and the Soviet Union to resolve the issue. The Soviet reply came on March 24th, where they pledged to remove their troops immediately, although in reality this took several more weeks to accomplish, during which time the United Nations Security Council, resolutions number 3 and 5, were also passed, complaining about and acknowledging the Soviet delay in removing its soldiers. So what was the delay about? Moscow was using this time to pressure the Iranian government into signing an agreement which gave the Soviet Union a 51% ownership share in Iranian oil. Of course, Iranian law dictated that such an agreement required the ratification of the Iranian parliament in order to be valid. Stalin, feeling secure with the agreement and not wanting to provoke an armed conflict with the West, removed Red Army troops from the People's Republic of Azerbaijan. That was in May of that year. He told the republic's leader, Peshawari, that he needed to remove himself from Iran in order to guarantee the American withdrawal from China, where Stalin was eager to increase his support for the Chinese communists in their struggle against the Kuomintang. So, are you following this so far? The Soviets think they have a deal for Iranian oil and abandon their allies in Iranian Azerbaijan in order to ensure easier support for the communists in China. So what happens next? You guessed it. The Iranian parliament, with the support of US allies, refuses to pass the Soviet oil agreement, no doubt leaving Stalin absolutely furious. This set Iranian foreign policy on a decidedly pro-American course for the coming decades and prevented any future Soviet collaboration with Iran, even when relations with the West and Iran began to break down. So, what did post-occupation Iranian politics actually look like? It's complicated comes to mind. Iran had a political system that did allow for some degree of pluralism. However, this pluralism allowed for instability, as there was a constant struggle for political control between the monarchy and the parliament. The Tudeh party, powerful leftists supported by the Soviet Union, squared off against the pro-Western forces. There were monarchists, as well as groups who wanted to weaken foreign interests by means of nationalizing the oil industry. And of course, the oppression of national minorities, notably the Kurds and Azerbaijanis, led to their emergence as political forces as well. And that one extra element that we haven't mentioned yet, but will play an ever-increasing role in Iranian politics: religion. Iran was, and continues to be, the center of Shia Islam, and the clerics continue to hold their historical role as major influences over Iranian politics. A difficult economic situation in Iran in the post-occupation period due to a weakening currency and loss of local manufacturing at the expense of foreign imports bolstered anti-Western sentiment and especially pro-communist sentiment. Foreign control over Iranian oil was an especially sensitive subject and naturally found itself a magnet issue in the bubbling cauldron of Iranian politics. A key figure was to emerge on the subject of Iranian oil, Mohammad Mossadegh, who had been instrumental in passing the law that required oil negotiations be passed through the Iranian parliament, the Majlis. The other key figure in Iranian politics was the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. You should write that name down. He's going to be a recurring figure on this channel. As the head of the army, he had personally led the restoration of control in northern Iran from the Soviet Union's occupation. The Shah's suspicion of political parties and politicians in general drove him to want to restore absolute control of the country to the peacock throne. As you can see, the tension in Iran was heading for a showdown. We here at the Cold War will continue to discuss this in our future videos, so please make sure that you're subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button. We rely on our patrons to create these videos, so consider supporting us via www.patreon.com/thecoldwar. This is the Cold War channel, and we will catch you on the next one.